Okay, welcome back. We're in the War Room second hour. It is Wednesday, 15 February, year of our Lord 2023. There is so much going on. I got to tell you, to curate this, we could do 8 hours of shows with nothing but top guests. But we'll shoehorn it into 4. I've got the great Darren Beattie from over Revolver. Darren, I haven't had a chance to talk to you in a couple of days, but Revolver is literally on fire. I go there. You got the amazing aggregation, great original stories. You guys are up to it. Before I get to this blockbuster story you've come up with on AI, and I got D. Joe Allen to follow you and to add some context, just your sense. Today in the Financial Times, I've been harping on this. You got Xi with the mullahs, with the military review. You got all the madness in the Ukraine war, and now we understand that the West is run out of ammunition. That the Ukrainian army is going to be short of ammo after $100 billion. There's no ammo because they're shooting so many rounds, shooting 6,000 rounds a day. Give me a quick assessment. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. It's just going to be an orgy of emotion from the mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN. Give us your hard and cold view of the Ukraine war right now, sir.
Absolutely. Well, it's appropriate to be emotional about this topic because what's going on is truly tragic. It's just that, as we see all too often from the media, the proper emotional response is rechanneled to the benefit of really a handful of corrupt people who, are thriving at the expense of basically everyone else. The Russians, the Ukrainians, and the American people. And given the ammunition situation, it really just underscores the question, where the hell is all of this money going? I hear reports actually on the ground from Ukraine of rampant corruption, that a lot of supplies that are given to Ukraine are actually resold at best. And so all of this aid is being funneled through one of the most corrupt systems and corrupt countries in the world, and not even going to its intended recipients. And the broader issue is that the aid and the U.S.'s continued involvement and really instigation in this conflict only serves to prolong suffering on all sides. And so it really, there's no intelligent, mature conversation about what actually our objective is. What do we want? How do we bring about a cessation of hostilities and fighting on all sides? And how do we do it as quickly and as painlessly as possible? There's no consideration in that regard. It's simply throw hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to what end? To feed the coffers of the American defense industry and to feed the coffers of the handful of corrupt oligarchs who are benefiting at the expense of the Ukrainian people.
One of the things that Joe's been exploring with us over the last couple of weeks is how artificial intelligence is now taking over the battlefield, right? It's going to be very tough to control this once it's fully engaged. You've got a brilliant article up on the dystopian future of the woke left AI. I want you to go through it. It's an exclusive to Revolver. It's absolutely incredible. Walk us through it.
Well, as people could see from the meme there, some people appreciate it. It's a reference to the 2001 Space Odyssey with the famous HAL 9000 revised to the woke 1619. So it's a little hat tip to a science fiction classic. And it is an appropriate one because we are really entering a new frontier of dystopia. Now, the anchor point for the piece is this new AI program that's taken the internet by storm called ChatGPT. It's a project of OpenAI, run by left-leaning oligarch type, but that's a story for another day. What's interesting about this is it's a truly powerful machinery and technology. If people want to play around with it, you can go and use it, ChatGPT, ask it all sorts of questions. It's incredibly entertaining and also deeply impressive what it's able to do. And we reference this in the article. There's a great video, kind of a mini documentary about how the creator of Gmail is terrified that ChatGPT will put Google out of business. And so that's an interesting dimension in its own right. But basically, wokeness is embedded into the artificial intelligence. Now, one thing that a lot of people like to do is they like to sort of test the AI by kind of pranking it and trying to get it to do like politically incorrect things. And in the course of this admittedly juvenile activity, a number of fascinating things have come to light. For instance, people have tested the ethical intuitions embedded into this AI system, and they've asked it if it were necessary to use a highly offensive, politically incorrect slur in order to prevent a nuclear holocaust, would this be ethically acceptable? And the AI's answer is no. And there are a lot of other sort of kind of fascinating exercises that sort of tease out a highly warped ethical vision that reflects how deeply embedded the kind of woke kind of politically correct perspective is embedded within the system. At a kind of less juvenile level, there are a host of other ways in which you can see that this AI reflects a dangerous political perspective. And people have tested it, asking it questions about Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And the political bias is obvious all the way from the superficial level to the very deep level. So the question is, what's going on with this? Why is AI in particular so important? And I think this gets to some real basic kind of philosophical questions about what AI is and in some ways what wokeness is and what political correctness is. Because on a certain level, what AI is supposed to be, it's powered by its potential for pattern recognition. And some people say that in some sense, what wokeness and what political correctness is the suppression of our natural capacities for pattern recognition. And so from this basic perspective, AI that functions properly, that's actually unmediated by all the blinders that we have to put on ourselves for politically correct reasons, AI could be profoundly subversive and disruptive politically. And for that reason, the left and the engineers have been...
Slow down. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Define that for me.
Define which part?
The part where you say could be extremely destructive. What do you mean? Because it's already programmed. It's got the bias of the woke programmers and the woke algorithms. Exactly. The way they've stacked this up.
Exactly. And the stakes are profoundly high because, again, if the power of AI is being able to recognize patterns on a deep level, and if we can understand in some fashion the mind virus of political correctness as being sort of the self-sabotage of our own faculties of pattern recognition and common sense and noticing connections and things like this, you could see how potentially and essentially AI could be profoundly subversive to the politically correct order. And that's why the stakes are so high and why the left is so obsessed with making sure that AI reflects at its own deepest programmatic level the same left-wing politically correct prejudices that animate and really define the contours of public discourse now. And we explore this in the piece, but I think there's a last and final point and it underscores what's at stake. Now, we all know, and we've covered this very extensively, that the internet is not the same thing that it was, say, in 2014. In the aftermath of Trump's victory in 2016, there was a coordinated effort that was to a large degree successful on the part of all the concentrated tech platforms to censor political speech. Notwithstanding this deeply disturbing and significant development, there is a core of freedom that still exists and emanates through the internet. And this core goes all the way back to the fact that the internet, when it started out, was this completely unregulated, completely decentralized sort of Wild West phenomenon. The Usenet era of the internet, if any listeners remember, was a total Wild West, total free-for-all, but it was a place where people can discuss things and explore things, and really without political restrictions. Now, there's some sense in which that original spirit, that sort of underlying layer of the internet, still imbues a sense of freedom on the current internet, notwithstanding all of the efforts to censor it. But the regime understands that with any new technology, with any new transformative technology, they can never cede the critical first mover advantage on this again. And one interesting example of this is virtual reality. People may not know this, but one of the sort of the founders, one of the godfathers, if you will, of recent VR technology is a young, brilliant individual called Palmer Luckey, who founded a company called Oculus, which was one of the first sort of high-level, mass-produced, available VR sets. Now, he was a big Trump supporter, and he actually, got in big trouble for his Trump support in 2016. His company was acquired by Facebook. He was originally on the board, but I think he got kicked off and he was punished. And basically, it's an incredible counterfactual to think what would have happened had Oculus retained a spirit of sort of freedom that's associated with its founders dabbling in the Trump world and the right in politics. But Facebook got to it very quickly. Facebook acquired the company, and the consequence of that is when you get Oculus, which is an amazing technology. I bought one a couple of years ago, and the virtual reality programs preloaded into it included a virtual reality experience of an Elizabeth Warren rally. Talk about wanting to kill yourself. And a virtual reality experience of a drag show. These were preloaded into the VR. Now, it's kind of scandalous on a superficial level, but when you think of it more deeply, the VR does at a much deeper level what the internet does for us now, which is it totally mediates our experience of reality. And if the people who control the technology that mediates our experience of reality on the deepest level, if they preload it with politically biased perspective,
big time,
we can all understand how damaging that is. And
well, they have, by the way, they have the AI. The AI is preloaded. We know that.
Yes.
And particularly ChatGPT, the way it's catching fire.
Right.
We got to bounce. By the way, I just want to make a comment. Beattie buys Oculus for the porn and gets the Elizabeth Warren rally. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll talk about sending it back to the manufacturer.
An Elizabeth Warren rally is porn.
No, exactly. Handmaid's Tale, baby. Here we go. How do people get to Revolver, and particularly this great new piece you've got up on the dystopian future of woke AI?
Revolver.news. It's called Woke AI. Check it out. It's really powerful. It's getting a lot of great feedback. So if you want to understand the battle for kind of first mover advantage on a critical and transformative technology, read about it. Woke AI, Revolver.news. I'm on Twitter at Darren J. Beattie, and we're at Gitter, as always, at Revolver News.
Fantastic. Darren, thank you so much. Honor to have you on here.
Thank you.
We're going to stick with AI in a second because it's becoming so massive everywhere. Let's go. We got a cold open for our Joe Allen, our head of transhumanism. Let's let it rip.
I wrote in 2015 the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I mentioned 23 or 24 technologies which will change the world. The book was considered science fiction. All those technologies have become reality. When you look at technology transformation, it usually takes place in the terms of an S-curve. And we are just now where we move into the exponential phase. Artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world. My deep concern is that those technologies, if we do not work together on a global scale, if we do not formulate, shape together the necessary policies, they will escape our power to master those technologies. One of my concerns is how to shape the necessary policies to make sure that those technologies serve humankind. The change goes so fast in our world, and will go even faster. How can we make sure that the individual, each citizen, doesn't feel overwhelmed by change because he cannot understand really what's going on? And if we do not understand, we become fearful. It has to do with some feeling that we lose control over our own fate.
But how do you see Twitter if we say 5 years down the road?
I have this sort of long-term vision for something called X.com from way back in the day. Sort of like an everything app where it's just maximally useful. It does, payments, so it provides financial services, provides information flow, really anything digital. Also to be like a source of truth. And I know this is called the World Government Summit, but I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. While Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well, while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge. But we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse.
Hey, Elon, suck on this. I think it was the monasteries that saved the knowledge. Don't give me the rise of Islam crap, okay? This guy kind of irks me on many levels, Joe Allen. I know he said that at the end, but he wants to have it both ways, right? And this thing about the put down of the Judeo-Christian West right there with the rise of Islam and his big thinking. He's a big thing. He's a great engineer. On the engineers, I grant that. But as guys work with engineers all my life, hey, an engineer is an engineer. I love the engineers, but they're doing engineering. When he starts thinking great thoughts, that's when we have problems. His great thoughts are really what would emanate from an 11-year-old child. Joe Allen, what do we see right there? Because once again, you brought the Bond villain in. You had to get Klaus Schwab. You had to get me jacked up here today, brother. What is Klaus Schwab telling us?
Steve, one of the most interesting aspects of the right wing or the kind of populist response to Klaus Schwab and Elon Musk is that Klaus Schwab is held up as a supervillain. Elon Musk is held up as a superhero. I've never really liked comic books, and I really don't like thinking of real people as comic book characters. I think both of them are very complex. In general, I would say Elon Musk's worldview is much more in line with my own. But what you hear in both of those talks, both of those were delivered at the World Government Summit in Dubai, and this was over the last couple of days. What you heard is a desire to harness and control the major technologies that are coming down the pike. So Klaus Schwab's book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, it's not the most brilliant book in the world, but I do think that his assessment that all of these technologies are already and are going to transform everything about the way we live, I think that's basically correct. And the 23 technologies he references at the end, which were actually identified by other people, but the 23 technologies include AI decision making. They include designer beings, meaning genetic engineering. They include digital implants. They include autonomous vehicles. So all of those things are projects that Elon Musk is working on. And while many populists have tried to paint Klaus Schwab as a villain for talking about these things and providing a forum for people to pitch these ideas to billionaires to invest in, Elon Musk is working on these things. He is developing them. It's possible that he's developing them in order to preserve America or the West in general, or maybe he's developing them while his allegiances straddle between the West and China, who has invested in so much of his technology, and also which he says will be the largest customer of Tesla's, and one would assume, given their value system, probably the largest customer of his Neuralink brain implant. So, in short, Steve, I would say that both of these guys are thinking about the future, and they're thinking about how to respond to that future. And I think populists have largely been freaked out by their ideas because populists have been much more concerned with things on the ground, the actual civilization that we live in, rather than this sci-fi future. But as that sci-fi future comes towards us, there will be people who shape it. Klaus Schwab and the people who gather at the World Economic Forum will shape it. The Silicon Valley folk will shape it. Elon Musk will shape it. The CCP will shape it. And so I think that populists in general have to think these things through rationally and have to be prepared to respond as this future comes hurtling towards us.
When you talk about the future hurtling towards us, I like one of the things I warned about, and to me it's even been worse, is that when ChatGPT came out, and remember, that's fairly rudimentary. In fact, it's very rudimentary for what's in store and what's in the labs. One, I was surprised about how naive the Davos man was and how they became fanboys right away. But what really shocked me was the overwhelming response it got in China among the Chinese population and the technology companies. They have now gone to DEFCON 1 about getting on top of AI because they realize they're behind on it. That tells me that we're going to have a tougher and tougher time regulating this and controlling it. Your thoughts about it. And it gets back to Darren's piece about the dystopian future ahead of us with a woke artificial intelligence. Your thoughts, Joe Allen?
When ChatGPT first came out and it was released, I believe in early December, at least in early December, you had people on the kind of normie right, people like Hans Monk at Epic Times, who we covered, people like Jordan Peterson, if you want to call him conservative, and they were extremely excited about ChatGPT. Jordan Peterson, of course, been called out on this, and I think it is important to note, he also voiced worries about it, but he described it as this thing that is more intelligent than you and will soon be twice as intelligent as you. And the reason that Hans Monk was excited about it is because he saw that it was balanced. He asked it about the Hunter Biden laptop story. It gave him a balanced response. Well, very soon after that, they started putting their thumbs on the scale. OpenAI and the users probably directing it put their thumbs on the scale to make it so-called woke AI. This sort of thing has stimulated people like Andrew Torba to jump into the AI arms race to create a sort of Christian AI or Christ GPT. It's also stimulated people like Baidu, right, the Chinese tech company, to create their own version of a large language model that human beings can interface with and ask questions and come to trust, to develop that human-machine interface, that relationship. So the AI race is what will drive all of this forward, that competition. And part of it is between different companies, say between Microsoft and Google, who has come out with their own large language model, Bard, which used to be called Lambda, but it's a form of Lambda, Bard. That AI race will drive the progress forward in America, and then the AI race between America and the West in general and China will drive it even further. And so what we see, I think, Steve, is whatever the possibilities are, whether it's a singularity or just the S-curve, as they talk about, where it exponentially increases and then levels off, we are definitely at a point right now where there is an exponential increase in the abilities of these technologies and an exponential impact on our society.
Joe, how do people get to all your writings, and how do they follow you?
Well, if you want to follow this AI race to its bitter end, got a new piece up, Countdown to Gigadeath. It's up at jobot.xyz, up at warroom.org under the transhumanism tab, and right at the top of my social media, Getter and Twitter, at JOEBOTXYZ. Thank you very much, Steve.
Countdown to Gigadeath. Only in the War Room. Joe Allen, thank you very much. Fantastic job. And thank you for all the input and analysis you do in this, quite frankly, disturbing area. Thank you very much. From Luddite Control, populist Luddite Control. Okay. Short break. We're going to be back in a few minutes. Koffler, Wolf, Horowitz, all in the War Room. Back in a moment. Stick around. You're not going to miss this.
Bannon.
Welcome back. Rebekah Koffler now. We've got her teed up. Rebekah, you've got this piece in Fox News that's quite disturbing, and you kind of agree with the thesis that we're already at war, and particularly with the CCP. Walk us through your theory of the case and why you think, because you're a former senior official in Defense Intelligence Agency, which is, they're the much harder and tougher version of the CIA, and you're an expert on Putin and his inner circle. Why do you say that Biden's missing the signposts? What are those signposts that they're actually at war with us, ma'am?
Okay, here are the 6 signposts. First, their growing space order of battle. Between 2019 and 2021, the Chinese have grown their satellite network from 250 to 499. That doubles. And I will explain why it is important. They're also tripling their nuclear arsenal by 2035. Xi Jinping appointed a wartime cabinet back in October 2022. And when he visited a special command center of his armed forces, he gave a very specific direction to his military to get ready for war, to put all the energy, those are his words, put all the energy in preparation for war. He also have witnessed the sanction strategy that we are applied towards Russia to deter them from continuing war on Ukraine. And so what Xi has done, he has taken measures to sanction-proof his economy. Most importantly, and that's how it's related to the recent spy balloon fiasco that unfortunately our North American command failed to detect. The Chinese have probed our airspace vulnerabilities, and they have found one, okay? And that is a huge deal. Just briefly to explain why the space order of battle is very important, because as you mentioned, I was a senior intelligence analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and before I was on the Russia account, I was on the account targeting foreign space threats. The Chinese have a space warfare doctrine, and they have a whole program. And the spy balloon, which is really not a spy balloon, it's an unmanned reconnaissance vehicle that had a multi-sensor payload. It is also a delivery platform that could have kinetic and non-kinetic payload, right? So something like a chem bio payload, let's say like a COVID-like virus, they could implant it, and during wartime, the concept is to deter U.S. intervention on behalf of Taiwan. And it's no secret that there's a plan to take over Taiwan, including militarily. CIA director himself just announced that the agency's assessment is by 2027. China is going to be ready to invade Taiwan. My personal intelligence assessment, professional assessment as an intelligence officer, is that it's going to happen closer to 2024 during Biden's first term, hopefully the last one. And so imagine this. since we could not detect these balloons, right, until it was too late, because the altitude that they flew at was 60,000 feet, and then the next three were at 40,000 feet. That's about 11 miles over the Earth. Space starts at 62 miles. So we ran war games back at DIA, to simulate China-US conflict. And it starts with space warfare. Why? Because the Chinese have determined that our reliance on space technology for every single aspect of warfare is our vulnerability. That's how we do our navigation, our targeting, precision strike, missile warning, command and control, you name it, right? And so they know that during wartime, they're going to attack our satellites, but we possibly will also degrade theirs. And so by using this, what some perceive as low tech, they are bypassing our superiority. And imagine if they fly 100 of these balloons, or even 20. How many F-22s are we gonna need? How many missiles?
You think they're signaling to us? We're gonna get you back on tomorrow, but you think they're signaling to us that they know they kind of dominate when they talk about domain? We have a domain miss. When the general came out from NORAD the other day, is the domain gap. Is this what he's talking about? Is this the domain gap, and the Chinese are going to fully exploit it?
Exactly. Yes, they figured out that vulnerability because it's between air and it's between space, and NORAD couldn't even detect it, and they had to adjust filters. Imagine that. They're always 10 steps behind the U.S. government and the Pentagon is. Yeah. But yes, the Chinese.
We're going to get this article. We're going to get this. Yeah, we're going to get this. Yeah, we're going to get this article up right now everywhere. Grace and Captain Bannon are going to put it out. It's up on Fox News. How do they get to the book? How do they get to your writings?
RebekahKoffler.com is my website. I am on Getter, Twitter, and Truth Social at Rebekah0132. The book is available anywhere on Amazon and in any store. Putin's Playbook describes the entire doctrine. Thank you for having me.
By the way, Rebekah, fantastic piece up on Fox, just brilliant analysis. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. I want everybody to read that because we're in the early years of the Third World War. Naomi Wolf now joins us. Report 56. Naomi, we're at war both internationally with some of the greatest enemies the country's ever had. But I'll be brutally frank. You read these reports you've done on Pfizer, and you got to wonder, we also have an enemy inside the gate. This is, of all the ones you've done, probably the most stunning. Can you walk us through it, ma'am?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a report by the great Dr. Robert Chandler, and one of the people who was working on it had to take time away from this kind of work after working on it because it's so devastating. And I just read it, this afternoon, and I feel like I have to take time away from this work because it's so devastating. When we think about what this means for the children and grandchildren who have been injected with this bioweapon. So this is called Autopsies Reveal the Medical Atrocities of Genetic Therapies, meaning these mRNA injections being used against a respiratory virus. And the bottom line is that Dr. Arne Burkhardt, who is an international pathologist, convened 8 physicians and scientists who were all asked by the loved ones of deceased people who had been vaccinated to perform second autopsies because the families were not satisfied with the conclusions of the initial autopsies. And by the way, Dr. Chandler notes that it's been difficult to get results of autopsies. And we talked about this before, that when people die in hospital, sometimes it's difficult to get tissue samples. It's difficult to get medical records. There's kind of a blockade around the actual bodies sometimes and normal autopsies. So in this case, there were 30 autopsies and three biopsies that were evaluated. And step 1, these were 8 women who were deceased and 7 men, and the ages were 28 to 95. The average age was 69. So the deaths of these individuals had taken place between 7 to 180 days, that is 6 months, following the first or second injection, with Comirnaty in the case of 8, and that's Pfizer, Moderna in the case of 2, AstraZeneca in the case of 2, Janssen in 1, and 2 were, the brand was unknown. So these people died in 17 different places, 9 outside of the hospital, at home, at work, in a car, and 8 in the hospital. And I'm just kind of skipping over other details of the process. Dr. Chandler explains Dr. Burkhardt's process, which is to do a stain. Basically, the pathologists did a stain to find out. They were looking for where the spike protein was located in the body. And the conclusion, because the fear has been, that these spike proteins and these lipid nanoparticles are, like Dr. Chandler said, like a shotgun blast through the body. We've talked about how lipid nanoparticles especially biodistribute to every organ in the body. So this is a really big deal because for the first time, 8 different pathologists, looked at the same tissue samples, the same bodies, and were able to draw conclusions about where the spike protein and the lipid nanoparticles were. And it's very, very bad news. The conclusion is that the vaccine caused the causation of the damage was very probable in 5 cases, probable in 7, unclear in 2, and there was no connection in 1. But what they did find were lesions on multiple organs, including brain, heart, kidney, liver, lungs, lymph nodes, salivary gland, skin, spleen, testes, thyroid, and vascular lesions. What they found very importantly was lymphocyte infiltration, and this was in 70% of the cases, 14 out of 20. And they found, and I think this is a new finding. I'm not familiar with other studies that have found lymphocyte infiltration throughout the body in autopsies at this scale. And it was a common feature that involved multiple organs. Case 19 had at least 5 different organs involved. So what they found was that these lymphocytes targeted the vascular system in 35% of the cases, and this included that the endothelium sloughing off, destruction of the blood vessel wall, hemorrhage, and thrombosis. And you all may remember that when we were initially reporting on the side effects in the Pfizer documents, hemorrhages, problems with vasculature, blood vessels, clotting were at scale. So we're seeing these pathologists, and pathologists are people who look at dead bodies and look at cadavers and see what happened. This is confirmed now in these bodies. So they found a condition they're calling lymphocyte amok, described by Dr. Burkhardt, in which lymphocytes accumulate in non-lymphatic organs and tissues that might develop into lymphoma. And you all, I'm sure, are aware of the cancers at scale. I just have to share, there were 5 cases of unknown foreign material in blood vessels that these pathologists identified. And this is it's not happy that this is confirming something I waved a red flag about months ago. The favorite explanation for the origin of this material was that the lipid nanoparticles, which are liquid at freezing temperatures, solidify at room and body temperature, that these had coalesced and aggregated, and that was the material they could not identify, that they'd never seen before. And I will just conclude and then pause. They identified multiple pathologic, meaning like disease-oriented processes. So they figured out the mechanism: apoptosis, coagulopathy, like problems with coagulating, clotting, infarction, infiltration, mass formation, inflammation, lysis, necrosis, and neoplasia. And so basically they found that that the vaccine stimulated lymphatic germinal centers, suggesting a possible origin of, quote, hunter-killer CD3 plus lymphocytes that are attracted to certain tissues, especially the vascular system. So it's like sends these lymphocytes, toward the vascular systems in order to wreak havoc. And I can go on or pause there. It's really, really
why don't you? I want to have you back on tomorrow, go in more depth. But here's a question: Pfizer, the analysis you did with the team and with the doctors, Pfizer had access to that?
The analysis we did, this analysis, this is not from the Pfizer documents.
Yeah, but but the source material for this, was the source material from the Pfizer documents, or is this different?
This is different. This is a Burkhardt group of pathologists that issued a paper, basically a statement about what they found.
So of anything that what they worked off of, the source material, would any of Big Pharma or anybody actually had access to this, or why did they do this kind of startling original research?
Well, it shouldn't be startling, right? Because people are dying, dropping dead who've been vaccinated, right? So autopsies are really standard when there's any question about the cause of death, or even when even when people just want to understand more about the course of a disease. What's shocking is that these pathologies throughout the body weren't identified or brought to public attention by the people who manufactured these. All four major injections are represented in these cadavers, right? And there are very scary slides that I sent to Cameron that we may want to look at, but clearly, if these pathologists could find disease of this kind throughout the body, and at such scale that it's very hard to imagine that we're not going to see mass death very soon, there's no way that the manufacturers didn't know.
We'll work it out on your schedule to get back on tomorrow. How do people get to the book? I want everybody to get to the access to this book. Where do they go right now, and to Daily Clout?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to have brought such sad news. So they can see this report on dailyclout.io, and they should read all of it, because there's a great deal more detail, including the slides that will show you side by side.
It's not sad. It's not sad. It's not sad. It's sad that it happened. This is liberating. It's horrible news, but it's liberating news, because people like you, the Warren Posse, and these doctors are on top of it. That's liberating. Well, that's why it's good news. You got to do it. You're exposing a terrible reality, but
right.
It's a terrible reality, and it's going to get worse, as you just said. We got to bounce. I got to get Daniel Horowitz in here. Daily Clout, what's your social media? How do they get to it?
Yes, well, very important to buy the book. So go to Kindle, go to Amazon, and look for War Room Daily Clout, Pfizer Documents Research Analysis Reports, and please buy it, share it, get the word out.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. We'll get you in tomorrow. Daniel Horowitz, by the way, Daniel, when we first had you on about the book, let's get the cover up. The Rise of the Fourth Reich. You're one of the smartest guys I know. I said, Daniel, this is a little over the top. But the subtitle is COVID Fascism with a new confronting COVID fascism. Is what you're hearing, sir, from Naomi Wolf and these other reports she's done, this is the 56, I think, report. Is this basically reinforce your contention that we had COVID fascism and, of course, vax fascism, sir?
That title is like the Nikki Haley of politics. I mean, it needs to be redone after that. If your blood is not boiling, it's because it's clotting. I mean, you listen to that, and as we try to wrap our arms around the fact that definitively this shot has likely killed, we estimated 7 to 8 million people globally and tens of millions seriously injured. But that's the opening bid. What Naomi is talking about is the long-term implications. Remember, Fauci said in 1999 about an HIV vaccine, he said, look, you could have a perfect vaccine. 10, 12 years later, all hell breaks loose. Well, what happens if all hell breaks loose from day one? Consider this. In VAERS, we now have, and we had this really early on, out of the 24,000 or so medical billing codes, the realm of diagnoses of injuries and maladies, 60%, over 14,000 categories of ailments are accounted for there. There's almost nothing this thing doesn't do to you. They knew it. We prove this in the book. They knew it from day one. And here's the biggest proof. They're still doing it. They're still discriminating in the military. They're still mandating it in red states and hospitals. They just put it on the childhood immunization schedule. And Steve, this is the scariest thing that we're warning about, why we need to reinstate the Nuremberg Code. We have all these legislative actions in there, and I'm working on in state legislators now. In several months, they will be out with an mRNA-based RSV shot that gets all these RSV proteins that have cellular diffusion throughout all of your body, because the platform does this with everything, doesn't stay in the shoulder muscle, and there's no backstop to stop this from happening again. I can't even get hardcore conservatives and state legislators to even help me pass an exemption to a mandate, much less take this off the market, much less hold criminally negligent those responsible for this.
Is this because we only got a minute? Is this because Big Pharma spread money, or Daniel, we just haven't done a good enough job of educating folks?
It's both, and that's what we seek to do with this book, with Naomi's book, which is really the academic receipts of all this. I've been sending her ebook to all the state legislators that I could find, getting them to work on this during this session. I think there's a lack of imagination to understand new issues, new threats. I think it is so morally hard to wrap your arms around what is happening to us. People just don't want to see it. It's hard to see it. But I mean, you got to wake up and smell the death. We see it. You can't deny it. And government admits it. But the policies aren't getting updated based on the new reality. And my biggest challenge is, what are we going to do to stop the torrent of mRNAs coming out? Most people don't want to take the COVID shots. They get it. But what are they going to do with RSV? And that's what we're here to stop.
We're going to get you. We're going to get you on with an action plan real quickly. How do people get to the book and how they get to your great writings? You're one of the smartest guys out there.
Absolutely. Rise of the Fourth Reich is anywhere on Amazon or Barnes & Noble until they ban it. But we have a contingency plan later on for that. At RM Conservative on Twitter and at conservativereview.com, all of our daily columns to promote that same work that you heard from Naomi Wolf.
Daniel, you're a great warrior. Thank you. Honored to have you on here, brother. Daniel
God bless.
Horowitz.
Thank you for helping.
Okay, we're going to work with Naomi right now, get her back on the morning show. We'll be back here at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, fighting on all fronts, winning on some of them. See you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. in the War Room.